The Beggar of Station 12, the cold metal floor of Orbital 12, had been Yuna's bed for 3 years now. She sat in her usual spot near the docking bay, wrapped in dirty rags that had once been a blanket. Her bowl sat before her, cracked and stained, holding a few small coins that passing aliens had thrown at her like she was garbage. She watched the crowds move past her. Tall insect creatures called Velki walked on 4 legs, their hard shells clicking against the floor. Fat Mora traders floated by on hover platforms, their large heads bobbing as they counted their money. Sleek cat-like Tasari moved through the shadows, their yellow eyes looking at everything, and everyone thought none of them looked at Yuna with kindness. To them, she was less than nothing. She was human. Humans had no power in the galaxy anymore. They were scattered across 1,000 worlds, working as slaves, servants, and entertainment for the elder species. The Galactic Concord, the great alliance of alien races, had decided long ago that humans were too primitive, too dangerous, too wild to be free. So they had taken everything from them. Why Yuan are remembered at different time. But she pushed those memories down, deep into the dark places of her mind where they could not hurt her. A group of young Velki males approached her. There were 4 of them, their shells bright green, which meant they were barely adults. They were looking for trouble. Yuna could see it in the way they moved, the way they pushed each other and laughed. "Look at this," one of them said. His voice was sharp and cruel. "A human beggar. I thought they cleaned this station." The others laughed. It was not a nice sound. "Please," Yuna said. Her voice was soft and broken. "Just a few credits. For food." The lead Velki leaned down. His face was close to hers, and she could smell the sweet stink of whatever he had been drinking. "Your kind should have stayed on your dying rock," he hissed. "Instead, you spread across the galaxy like disease." He kicked her bowl. The coins scattered across the floor, rolling away into the crowd. Some aliens picked them up and kept walking. No one stopped to help. Yuna said nothing. She slowly got to her hands and knees and began collecting the coins that remained. Her fingers were thin and covered in dirt. Her nails were cracked. She looked like she might break if someone pushed her too hard. The Velki laughed again and walked away, already looking for someone else to bother. From across the busy walkway, a young man watched. His name was Dohan, and he was 24 years old. He was human, one of the few on this station. He worked as a mechanic in the lower levels, fixing engines and cleaning filters. The aliens tolerated him because he was good at his job and because he never caused problems. Dohan had seen the old woman many times. He had never spoken to her, but he felt something twist in his chest every time he saw her sitting there, begging for scraps. She reminded him of his grandmother, who had died in the labor camps when he was a boy. He wanted to help her, but helping her meant drawing attention. And drawing attention, for a human, was dangerous. He turned away and went back to work. Night came to Orbital 12. The station did not have real day or night, but the lights dimmed every 12 hours to help the residents sleep. The crowds thinned. The shops closed their doors. The beggars and homeless found corners and alleys to hide in. Yuna walked slowly through the back passages of the station. Her body ached. She was 53 years old, but she felt much older. The years had not been kind to her. Nothing had been kind to her. She found her usual spot, a narrow space between 2 waste processing units. It was warm here, and the noise of the machines covered any sound she might make. She lowered herself to the ground, her bones creaking, and pulled her rags around her. She closed her eyes, and the memories came as they always did. She saw fire. Great walls of fire rolling across the darkness of space. She saw ships burning, breaking apart, their crews screaming as they died. She saw herself standing on the bridge of a massive warship, her black hair flowing behind her, her eyes bright with fury and purpose. She heard a name. Her name. But not the name she used now. They had called her the Dragon Queen. She had commanded a fleet of 100 ships. She had freed millions of humans from slavery. She had made the Galactic Concord tremble with fear. When her black flagship, the Ember Throne, appeared in a system, the enemy ran. When she spoke, armies listened. But that was 30 years ago. That was a different woman. That woman was dead. Una opened her eyes. Her cheeks were wet with tears. She did not remember crying. She wiped them away with a dirty hand and stared at the ceiling. The machines hummed around her. Somewhere in the distance, she heard aliens laughing, drinking, living their lives. They had no idea who slept in their trash. They had no idea what she had done, what she had been, what she had lost. And maybe that was better. Maybe it was better to be forgotten. To be nothing. To just fade away and die in some dark corner where no one would notice or care. But deep inside her, in a place she tried very hard to ignore, something still burned. A small flame that refused to go out. A spark of the fire that had once made her the most feared human in the galaxy. She was tired. She was broken. She was old and weak and alone, but she was not dead. Not yet. The next morning, Una returned to her spot near the docking bay. She sat down, placed her cracked bowl before her, and waited. The crowds returned, flowing around her like water around a rock. No one looked at her. No one cared. But then someone stopped. Una looked up and saw the young human mechanic standing there. He was holding a small package wrapped in cloth. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "Here," he said quietly. He placed the package in front of her. "It is not much. Just some bread and dried meat. But it is clean." Una looked at the package, then at the young man. "Why?" she asked. Duhan shrugged. He did not know how to answer that question. "Because you are human," he finally said. "And we have to look out for each other. No one else will." He turned and walked away quickly, disappearing into the crowd before she could say anything else. Una watched him go. Then she picked up the package and opened it. Inside was exactly what he had said: bread and dried meat. Simple food. Real food. Not the garbage scraps she usually ate. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt something that was not pain or sadness or emptiness. She felt grateful, but gratitude was dangerous. Gratitude meant connection. Connection meant caring. And caring meant having something to lose. Una had lost everything once. She did not think she could survive losing anything else. She finished her meal, tucked the cloth into her rags, and returned to her begging. The day passed slowly. The aliens walked by. The coins fell into her bowl. And Una sat there, silent and still, like a statue of a woman who had once been a queen. But statues do not dream. And that night, Una dreamed of fire. Echoes of Fire Dawn could not stop thinking about the old woman. He worked on engines all day, his hands covered in oil and grease, but his mind kept returning to her. There was something about her that did not make sense. Something in her eyes that did not match the rest of her. Beggars had empty eyes. He had seen many of them across the galaxy. Humans who had given up, who were just waiting to die. Their eyes were dull and lifeless, like the lights had gone out inside them. But this woman's eyes were different. They were sharp, aware, even when she looked down at the ground, even when she hunched her shoulders and made herself small. Those eyes were watching everything. Duhan decided to watch her too, over the next few days. He found reasons to walk past her spot near the docking bay. He brought her food when he could, small packages that he left without speaking. She always nodded at him, a tiny movement of her head. But she never spoke more than a few words. He learned her name was Una. That was all she would tell him. One night. Dohan stayed late in the market area, pretending to shop while actually watching the old woman from a distance. The crowds had thinned, and most of the shops were closing. Yuna gathered her few belongings and began walking toward the back alleys where she slept. A drunk Tazari followed her. The cat-like alien was big. His fur matted and dirty, his yellow eyes glazed with alcohol. He called out to her, saying horrible things, laughing at his own cruel jokes. Yuna did not respond. She just kept walking, her head down, her steps slow. The Tazari got angry. He did not like being ignored. He ran forward and grabbed her arm, spinning her around. His claws dug into her thin flesh. "I am talking to you, human," he growled. "When a Tazari speaks, you listen." Dohan started to move, ready to help, knowing it was probably going to get him killed. But then he stopped, because something happened that he did not expect. Yuna moved. It was fast, so fast that Dohan almost missed it. One moment she was hunched and weak, the next she was something else entirely. Her free hand shot up, hitting the Tazari in the throat. Her knee came up into his stomach. And then she twisted, using his own weight against him, and threw him to the ground. The Tazari hit the metal floor hard. He gasped for air, his hands clutching his throat, his eyes wide with shock and fear. Yuna stood over him for just a moment. In the dim light of the alley, she looked like a different person. Her posture was straight, her shoulders back, her chin raised. The weakness was gone. The frailty was gone. What remained was something cold and hard and dangerous. Then, just as quickly, it was over. She hunched again, made herself small again, and walked away as if nothing had happened. The Tazari lay on the ground, coughing and gasping, too shocked and hurt to follow. Dohan pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding. He had seen fighters before. He had even seen humans who knew how to defend themselves. But he had never seen anything like that. That was not just skill. That was something else. That was the movement of someone who had killed many, many times. Who was this woman? He needed to know. Dohan worked in the lower levels of the station, but he had access to the information networks. It was not legal access, exactly. He had learned long ago that survival sometimes meant breaking rules. He knew how to search records that were supposed to be private, how to find information that others wanted hidden. That night, he began searching. He looked for any records of a human woman named Yuna. There were thousands of results, none of them useful. He tried different searches, looking for humans with combat training, humans who had been soldiers or rebels or fighters. And that was when he found the stories. They were old, buried deep in historical archives that most people never looked at. They told of a time, 30 years ago, when humans had fought back against the Galactic Concord, a rebellion that had lasted almost 10 years, that had freed millions of slaves, that had made the elder species fear the primitive, humans for the first time. And at the center of every story was a woman. They called her the Dragon Queen. The record said she had been taken as a child, forced to fight in the arena pits of the Mora elite. She had been a slave, like so many humans, expected to die for the entertainment of her masters. But she had not died. She had won. Again and again she had won, until she was the greatest fighter the arenas had ever seen. And then she had escaped. She had stolen a warship from a Moro lord. She had gathered other escaped slaves, other humans who wanted to fight. Her army grew. Her fleet grew. She attacked slaver stations and liberated the humans trapped there. She burned the ships of the Concord wherever she found them. They called her the Dragon Queen because she showed no mercy. Her flagship, a massive black warship called the Ember Throne, became the symbol of human resistance. When that ship appeared in a system, the Concord forces ran. When she broadcast a message, millions of humans listened. For almost 10 years, she had been the most dangerous being in the galaxy. But then, 20 years ago, she had disappeared. The records were unclear about what had happened. Some said she died in a great battle. Some said she died in a great battle. Some said she surrendered. Some said the Concorde captured her and executed her in secret. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Dragon Queen was gone, and with her, the human rebellion had ended. Doan stared at his screen for a long time. He looked at the old images from the records. Pictures of the Dragon Queen standing on the bridge of her ship, giving speeches to her army, leading attacks on enemy stations. The woman in those pictures was young and strong and beautiful in a fierce, terrifying way. Her black hair was long and wild. Her eyes burned with fire. She looked nothing like the broken beggar he had been feeding for weeks, but there was something in those eyes. Something he recognized. Duhan did not sleep that night. He kept searching, kept reading, kept trying to understand. And slowly, piece by piece, he began to put the story together. The Dragon Queen had not died. She had been captured. The Concorde had taken her crew, her friends, her family. They had given her a choice, surrender or watch everyone she loved die. She had surrendered. They had executed her officers, including a man named Taiwan. The record said he was her husband, her second in command, her closest friend. They had made her watch him die. And then they had broken her in ways that the records did not describe. Stripped her identity, erased her from history, and dumped her somewhere to rot. They had not killed her because death would have made her a martyr. The Concorde wanted her to be forgotten. They wanted her to disappear. They wanted the galaxy to believe that the Dragon Queen had never existed at all. And for 20 years, they had succeeded. Duhan leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking. The old beggar woman, the one he had been giving bread and meat to, the one who sat in dirty rags near the docking bay, was the most legendary human warrior in galactic history. She was the Dragon Queen, and she was alive. He did not know what to do with this information. Part of him wanted to run to her, to tell her that he knew, to ask her 1,000 questions. Part of him was afraid. If the Concorde learned she was here, if they knew she had survived, they would come for her. They would come for anyone who had helped her. But another part of him, a part that had been quiet for a very long time, felt something else. Something that felt like hope. Because if the Dragon Queen had survived, if she was still alive after everything they had done to her, then maybe she could rise again. Maybe the fire was not dead. Maybe it was just waiting for the right moment to burn. Dohan made his decision. He would not tell anyone what he had learned. Not yet, but he would watch over her. He would protect her as much as he could. And if the time ever came, if she ever needed him, he would be ready. The Dragon Queen was alive. And that changed everything. The dead unpaid Orbital 12 had many rulers, but none was more feared than Viarn. He was a Mora crime lord, his body fat and soft, his head large and bulging with the extra brain tissue that his species was so proud of. He floated everywhere on a golden hover platform, surrounded by guards, surrounded by fear. Viarn owned the station in all the ways that mattered. He controlled the smuggling routes. He controlled the black markets. He ran the fighting pits where aliens and humans alike were forced to battle for the entertainment of the rich. And he ran the slave trade, buying and selling humans like they were cargo. When Viarn heard about the human beggar who had attacked one of his Tessari associates, he was not angry. He was curious. "Bring her to me," he said, his voice wet and bubbling. "I want to see this human who thinks she can fight." His guards found Yuna in her usual spot. She did not resist when they grabbed her. She let them drag her through the station, past the crowds of aliens who watched with mild interest, up to the Grand Tower where Viren made his home. The crime lord's throne room was disgusting and beautiful at the same time. Gold covered every surface. Strange creatures from 100 worlds floated in tanks of colored liquid. Slaves, mostly human, stood along the walls with empty eyes, waiting to serve. Yuna was thrown to the floor at the base of Ren's platform. She stayed down, her face pressed against the cold metal, her body still and small. Vion floated down to look at her. "So this is the beggar who attacked my man," he said. "I expected something more impressive." Yuna said nothing. Vion poked her with a golden stick. "Look at me, human. When Amora speaks to you, you look at him." Slowly, Yuna raised her head. Her face was calm. Her eyes were empty, like the eyes of the slaves on the walls. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a broken old woman with nothing left. Vion laughed. "You see? Nothing. Just another worthless human. But my associate says you move fast. He says you fought like you knew what you were doing. Is that true?" "I was scared," Yuna said softly. "He was going to hurt me. I just reacted." "Just reacted," Vion repeated. He did not believe her, but he did not care either. The truth did not matter. What mattered was what he could use. "I have fighting pits, human. I am always looking for new fighters." The crowds get bored watching the same ones die over and over. Yuna lowered her head again. "Please, I am old. I am weak. I would not last one fight." "That is probably true," Varan agreed. "But it would be entertaining to watch. And entertainment is all that matters." He gestured to his guards. "Take her to the pits. She fights tomorrow. If she wins, she can fight again. If she dies, well, that is entertainment too." The guards grabbed Yuna and dragged her away. She did not fight. She did not scream. She just let them take her, her body limp, her face blank. But inside, deep inside where no one could see, something was changing. She had spent 20 years trying to die. She had walked to the edge of cliffs and bridges and airlocks, thinking about stepping off. She had stopped eating, stopped caring, stopped hoping. She had wanted the pain to end, wanted the memories to stop, wanted to finally be free of the guilt and grief that crushed her every single day. But something had stopped her. Every time she got close, something pulled her back. She did not know what it was. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was stubbornness. Or maybe, somewhere deep down, there was still a spark of the woman she had been. A spark that refused to go out, no matter how much darkness surrounded it. Now, sitting in the cold cell beneath Ren's fighting pit, Yuna felt that spark begin to grow. They were going to make her fight. They were going to throw her into an arena, give her to some monster as a meal, and laugh while she died. That was what they expected. That was what they wanted. But Yuna had been in arenas before. She had stood in the blood and sand of 100 fighting pits. She had killed champions and beasts and things that had no names. She had earned her freedom with her fists and her fury, and she had never stopped fighting until they had taken everything from her. Everything. She closed her eyes and saw Taiwan's face. Her husband, her partner, her love. He had stood beside her through the darkest years, had fought with her, laughed with her, held her when the nightmares came. And then they had made her watch as they executed him. One shot to the head, his body falling to the ground like it was nothing. She saw the faces of her crew. Minji, her pilot, who could fly through an asteroid field blindfolded. Junho, her weapons officer, who told terrible jokes and cried at sad stories. Sujin, her engineer, who had been like a sister to her. All dead, all gone. All because of her. The Concord had not just wanted to defeat her. They had wanted to destroy her. They had wanted to take everything that made her who she was and crush it into dust. And for 20 years, she had let them win. But sitting in that cell, waiting to die in some alien's fighting pit, Yuna felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt angry. The anger started small, like a match being struck in the darkness. But it grew. It fed on the memories, on the pain, on the years of humiliation and suffering. It burned through the emptiness that had filled her for so long, pushing it back, replacing it with something hot and fierce and alive. They had taken her love. They had taken her people. They had taken her name and her history and her hope. They had turned her into a beggar, a nobody, a piece of trash that aliens kicked aside on their way to somewhere more important. But they had not taken everything. They had not taken the fire that had made her the Dragon Queen. They had just buried it, covered it with pain and grief and time. Let her think it was dead. It was not dead. Yuna opened her eyes. The cell was still cold. The guards were still outside. Tomorrow she would be thrown into an arena to die for the entertainment of creatures who saw her as less than an animal. But she was not going to die. Not tomorrow. Not like this. The Dragon Queen was going to rise again. In another part of the station, Dohan heard the news. The old beggar woman had been taken to Ren's fighting pits. She was going to be forced to fight tomorrow, probably against something that would kill her in seconds. Dohan felt sick. He had to do something. He could not just let her die. That he did not have weapons. He did not have money. He did not have friends or allies or any kind of power. But he had skills. He could get into systems that were supposed to be secure. He could open doors that were supposed to be locked. He could cause problems for people who thought they were safe. If Yuna was going to fight, he was going to make sure she had a chance. He worked through the night, slicing into Vran's security systems, learning the layout of the fighting pits, finding every weakness he could exploit. He did not know if it would be enough. He did not know if anything would be enough. But he had to try, because the Dragon Queen was still alive. And even if she did not know it yet, the galaxy still needed her. Humanity still needed her. Tomorrow, the fire would burn again. One way or another, everything was about to change. The Queen awakens. The arena was a pit of blood and sand, surrounded by rising seats filled with screaming aliens. Lights blazed down from above, so bright they made everything look sharp and harsh. The smell of death hung in the air, mixed with the sweet stink of expensive drinks and the sweat of creatures who had paid good money to watch others suffer. Bjorn sat in his private box, high above the arena floor, surrounded by his guards and his slaves. He was enjoying himself. The fights had been good tonight, lots of blood, lots of screaming. And now came the final entertainment of the evening, the human beggar who thought she could fight. The gates opened, and Yuna was pushed into the arena. She stumbled forward, her rags hanging loose on her thin frame, her feet bare, her hands empty. She looked exactly like what they expected. A weak old woman, confused and afraid, about to die for their amusement. The crowd laughed. They threw things at her. Pieces of food, empty cups, whatever they had in their hands. Some of them took bets on how long she would last. Most said less than a minute. Then the other gate opened. The Valky champion was massive, standing almost 3 meters tall on his 4 powerful legs. His shell was dark red, scarred from dozens of battles, decorated with the symbols of his victories. In his upper arms he carried a curved blade and a heavy club. In his lower arms he carried a net and a chain. His name was Krath, and he had killed 50 opponents in this arena. He had never lost. He looked at Yuna like she was already dead. Begin. Vion shouted. Kra to move forward, his legs carrying him across the sand with surprising speed for something so large. He raised his blade, ready to end this quickly. The crowd cheered, anticipating blood. Yuna did not move. She stood in the center of the arena, her head down, her shoulders hunched. She looked like she was waiting to die. Krath swung his blade, and then everything changed. Yuna moved. Not the slow, careful movement of an old woman. Not the panicked scramble of a frightened victim. She moved like water, like fire, like something that had been trained to kill since childhood. The blade passed through empty air where she had been. She was already somewhere else. Krath tried to turn, but she was faster. Her hand shot out, striking a joint in his leg that should have been protected by his shell. But she knew exactly where the weakness was, exactly how hard to hit. The leg buckled. The crowd went silent. Krath roared and swung his club, but Yuna was already moving again. She ducked under the blow, came up inside his guard, and drove her elbow into the soft tissue beneath his chin. His head snapped back. She grabbed his net arm and twisted, using his own weight against him. And suddenly the massive champion was on the ground. She took his blade from his hand, like she was picking a flower. The fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. Yuna stood over the fallen champion, the curved blade in her hand, her breath steady. She was not even breathing hard. The rags hung from her body, but she did not look weak anymore. She looked like something out of a nightmare. Krath tried to rise. She put her foot on his chest and pressed down. The blade touched his throat. "Yield," she said. Her voice was different now. It was not soft or broken. It was cold and hard and carried across the silent arena like a blade of its own. Krath looked up at her with something that Velki almost never showed: fear. "I yield," he gasped. "Yun, a step back." She turned slowly, looking up at the crowd, at the thousands of aliens who had come to watch her die. They stared back at her in shock. No one was laughing now. No one was throwing things. Then she looked at Bjorn. The crime lord was leaning forward in his box, his large eyes wide, his mouth hanging open. He had never seen anything like this. None of them had. Yuna smiled. It was not a nice smile. "You wanted entertainment," she said, her voice echoing through the arena. "I will give you entertainment." She drove the blade into the sand at her feet. Then she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and looked at them with eyes that burned like the heart of a star. "My name is Yuna of Earth," she said. "Commander of the Ember Fleet, liberator of the Outer Chains. The Concord named me Monster. Your masters called me Nightmare. The galaxy knew me as the Dragon Queen." She paused. The silence was absolute, and I'm not finished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then chaos exploded through the arena. Some aliens screamed and tried to run. Others shouted in disbelief. Guards began pouring onto the arena floor, weapons drawn. Bjorn was shouting orders, his voice high and panicked, pointing at Yuna like she was a bomb about to explode. But across the station, Doham was already moving. He had spent the whole night preparing for this moment. He did not know if Yuna would win, did not know if she would reveal herself, but he had made plans for every possibility. Now he put those plans into action. The doors of the arena locked. The guards inside found themselves trapped with the very thing they were supposed to stop. The lights flickered and went out, then came back on red, casting everything in the color of blood. In the confusion, Yuna moved. She pulled the blade from the sand and walked toward the guards surrounding her. They raised their weapons, but they were afraid. They had seen what she had done to Krath. They knew what she was. "Move," she said, "or die." Some of them moved. The ones who did not lasted only seconds. Yuna cut through them like they were made of paper. Every movement was perfect, every strike precise. She did not waste energy. She did not show off. She simply killed, one after another, stepping over bodies like they were furniture. In his private box, Bjorn screamed for more guards. But the doors were locked. Dohan's work had sealed him in, trapped him with nowhere to run. Yuna climbed the stairs to the private box. Her feet left bloody prints on the white marble. When she reached the top, only Bjorn and a few bodyguards remained. "Stay back." Bjorn shrieked. Do you know who I am? Do you know what the Concord will do to you? Una smiled that terrible smile again. The Concord already did everything they could do to me, she said. They took my love. They took my friends. They took my name. They thought they broke me. They were wrong. She moved forward. The bodyguards tried to stop her. They failed. Moments later, Una stood over Varan. The crime lord had fallen from his hover platform and was crawling backward across the floor, his fat body shaking with terror. Please, he begged. I can give you money, ships, power, whatever you want. Una looked down at him. She thought about all the humans he had enslaved, all the lives he had destroyed, all the suffering he had caused because he saw humans as nothing more than property. She wanted to kill him. The fire inside her screamed for his blood, but she held back. Because death was too easy, and because she needed him for something more important. You are going to send a message, she said. You are going to tell everyone what happened here tonight. You are going to tell them who I am. And you are going to tell them that the Dragon Queen has returned. Viren nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. Una leaned close. And if you ever touch another human, I will come back. And next time, I will not be so kind. She stood up and walked away, leaving the broken crime lord sobbing on the floor of his own throne room. Behind her, the arena still echoed with screams and chaos. But above it all, one word was beginning to spread, passing from mouth to mouth, from alien to alien. Racing through the station and out into the galaxy beyond, the Dragon Queen was alive, and nothing would ever be the same. Fire Reborn, the news spread across Orbital 12 like wildfire. In bars and markets, in homes and workplaces, everyone was talking about what had happened in Vran's arena. The human beggar who had defeated the undefeated champion. The old woman who had cut through a dozen guards like they were nothing. The name that had been forgotten for 20 years, now suddenly on every tongue. The Dragon Queen was alive. For the humans on the station, it was like a dream. For years they had survived by keeping their heads down, by accepting the insults and the abuse, by pretending they were exactly what the aliens thought they were. Weak, primitive, beaten. They had forgotten what it felt like to fight back. They had forgotten what it meant to have hope. Now they remembered. It started small. A human worker refused to be pushed aside by a Velki supervisor. A human servant stood up to a Mora master who tried to beat her. A human miner looked an alien guard in the eye and did not look away. These were small acts, tiny rebellions that would not have meant anything by themselves, but they added up. And they spread. Doan worked tirelessly in those first days. He had revealed himself to Una after her victory in the arena, confessing that he knew who she was, that he had been helping from the shadows. She had looked at him for a long moment, her sharp eyes reading him like a book. You are brave, she had said finally. Or foolish. I have not decided which. Maybe both, Dohon had replied. She had almost smiled at that thought. Now he served as her right hand, using his skills to coordinate the growing resistance. Messages flew through secret channels. Weapons were gathered from hidden places. Humans who had skills, who had been waiting for a chance to use them, came forward and offered their help. But it was not just humans who joined them. Old allies began to appear. Species who had fought alongside the Dragon Queen in the old rebellion, who had hidden when she fell, now emerged from the shadows. There were Tazari warriors who remembered fighting beside human soldiers. There were Velki deserters who had abandoned the Concord years ago. There were even some Mora, the ones who had been disgusted by their own kind's cruelty and greed. The rebellion grew, day by day, hour by hour. VRN, true to his word, had sent the message. He had broadcast across every channel that the Dragon Queen had returned, hoping that the Concord would come and save him. But the opposite happened. His empire crumbled. His allies abandoned him. His guards deserted. Within a week, the great crime lord was a prisoner in his own tower, guarded by the very humans he had once enslaved. Orbital 12 was free. Una stood on the bridge of a captured warship, looking out at the stars. The ship had belonged to Varan, stolen from a Concord patrol years ago and hidden in the station's lower docks. It was old and battered, nothing like the magnificent Ember Throne that she had once commanded. But it was a beginning. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity. Human officers sat at the control stations, learning systems they had never been allowed to touch before. Dohun worked at the communications panel, his fingers flying across the controls as he coordinated with cells across the sector. And outside the windows, more ships gathered. Small ships, old ships, broken ships held together by hope and determination. It was not a fleet. Not yet. But it was growing. Doan approached her, his face tired but excited. "We have received another message," he said. "A convoy from the outer chains. They heard about what happened here. They are bringing supplies, weapons, and 300 volunteers." Una nodded. The outer chains. She had liberated those worlds 30 years ago. The children of the people she had freed were now coming to fight beside her. "And there is more," Dawn continued. "Scouts report movement at the sector boundary. Concord ships are gathering. They are coming for us." This was expected. The Concord would not let her rebellion spread again. They would send everything they had to crush it before it grew too strong. But this time, things were different. "How many ships?" Una asked. "At least 50. Maybe more. They will be here in 3 days. 50 ships against their handful of broken vessels. It should have been hopeless. It should have been suicide. But Una had faced worse odds before. And she had something the Concord did not understand. She had people who believed. "Call a meeting," she said. "All commanders, all allies. We need to plan." The meeting took place in the station's central hall, a massive space that had once been used for Rand's parties. Now it was filled with fighters of a dozen species, all looking to the small human woman who stood at the center. Una looked at them. She saw Tazari warriors with their claws sharpened for battle. She saw Velki soldiers standing beside humans who would have been their slaves weeks ago. She saw faces young and old, scared and determined, united by something stronger than fear. "The Concord is coming," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall like thunder. "They are coming with 50 ships to destroy us. They think they can crush us like they crushed us 20 years ago." She paused, letting the words sink in. They are wrong. She began to walk among them, looking into faces, meeting eyes. 20 years ago, they broke me. They took everything I loved and made me watch it burn. They thought they had killed the Dragon Queen. They thought they had ended the human rebellion forever. Her voice grew stronger. But they forgot something. They forgot that you cannot kill an idea. You cannot destroy hope. You can break one person, but you cannot break all of us. And as long as one human draws breath, as long as one voice speaks for freedom, the rebellion lives. She stopped in the center of the hall and turned slowly, facing all of them. "I do not promise you victory. I do not promise you safety. I promise you only this, the chance to fight. The chance to stand up and say that we are not slaves. We are not property. We are not animals to be caged and beaten and sold. We are free, and we will die free before we ever kneel again." The hall erupted. Humans cheered, their voices rising like a wave. Aliens stomped their feet and clashed their weapons. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, beautiful. Doan watched from the side, tears streaming down his face. He had never seen anything like this. He had never felt anything like this. For the first time in his life, he believed they could actually win. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Ships were repaired. Weapons were distributed. Plans were made and changed and made again. Una barely slept, working with her commanders to prepare for the battle that was coming. And then, on the third day, the Concorde fleet arrived. They came out of hyperspace like a wall of metal and fire. 50 warships, their weapons hot, their shields raised. Their mission clear: destroy the rebellion and kill the Dragon Queen once and for all. Una stood on her bridge, watching them approach on the display screens. Her fleet was outnumbered 5 to 1. Their ships were older, slower, weaker. By every measure, she should have retreated. She should have run. But running was not what the Dragon Queen did. "All ships," she said into the communication system. "This is Commander Una. Today we show the galaxy that humanity cannot be broken. Today we remind them why they feared us. Today we fight." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was like iron wrapped in fire. "Set course for the Concorde fleet. All weapons hot. The Dragon Queen has returned." The fleet moved forward. 10 ships against 50. Hope against power. Freedom against chains. That it was the beginning of a war that would change the galaxy forever. And at the heart of it all, standing on the bridge of her battered warship, was a woman who had once been a beggar, who had once been broken, who had once been nothing, but not anymore. Now she was fire. Now she was fury. Now she was the Dragon Queen, and the galaxy would burn.